The lawyer's office smelled like old leather and disappointment. I sat there, watching my sister Victoria count zeros on her inheritance check while I stared at a dusty cardboard box filled with VHS tapes. 23 years old, and this was my legacy. Home videos nobody had watched in decades. The room was so quiet I could hear the fluorescent lights humming above us, that particular frequency that makes your teeth ache. Victoria's manicured nails clicked against her phone screen as she calculated what she'd do with her fortune. I traced my finger along the edge of the box, feeling the rough cardboard catch against my skin, wondering if Dad had really thought so little of me that he'd left me nothing but memories I probably wasn't even in. If you've ever been the invisible child in your family, you'll understand what happens next. Sometimes the things that seem worthless hold the most value, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Before I tell you about the tape that changed everything, about the secret that brought an empire to its knees, I need you to understand something. This isn't just about money or revenge. It's about a daughter who discovered her father saw her more clearly than anyone else ever had. If you've ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or forgotten, this story is for you. Stay with me, because what I found in that box of tapes will make you question everything you think you know about inheritance, about family, and about the price of keeping secrets. My name is Emma, though in my family I was more often called the other one, or Victoria's sister, or my personal favorite, the disappointment. The reading of my father's will had been scheduled for exactly 2 weeks after his funeral, giving everyone just enough time to pretend they were mourning while secretly calculating their expected windfalls. My father, William Hartley, had built a real estate empire from nothing, starting with a single rental property and expanding it into a portfolio worth over $50 million. Everyone knew where that money was going, to Victoria, the golden child who had followed in his footsteps, who had gotten her MBA from Wharton, who had married Richard Blackwood III, heir to a pharmaceutical fortune. I had gotten a degree in library science. I worked at the public library downtown, helping kids find picture books and teaching seniors how to use computers. In my family's eyes, I had wasted my potential, squandered my opportunities, chosen poverty over prosperity. They never said it quite that bluntly, but every family dinner, every holiday gathering, every casual conversation was peppered with little reminders of my failure to live up to the Hartley name. The lawyer, Mr. Peterson, had been my father's attorney for 30 years. His face was professionally neutral as he read through the will, but I caught him glancing at me with something that looked almost like pity. Or maybe it was confusion. I couldn't tell. "To my daughter, Victoria Hartley Blackwood," he read, his voice echoing in the wood-paneled room. "I leave my entire real estate portfolio, all associated business holdings, and the remainder of my liquid assets after all other bequests have been fulfilled." Victoria didn't even try to hide her smile. She sat there in her designer suit, her platinum wedding ring catching the light, looking like she had won the lottery, which, essentially, she had. Her husband Richard squeezed her shoulder, already probably thinking about the yacht upgrade they'd been discussing. "To my daughter, Emma Hartley," Mr. Peterson continued, and I straightened slightly despite myself. "I leave the contents of the storage unit at Guardian Self-Storage on Maple Street, Unit 47B, paid up for the next year." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Victoria laughed. Actually laughed. "A storage unit?" she said, not even trying to hide her amusement. "He left Emma a storage unit?" My stepmother, Patricia, who had been married to my father for the last 5 years, shook her head with false sympathy. "Oh, Emma, I'm sure there are some valuable antiques in there. Your father was always collecting things." But I knew better. I had helped my father clean out that storage unit just 2 years ago. We had donated everything worth donating, thrown away the rest. All that had been left were boxes of old family videos, photo albums, and some furniture that wasn't worth the cost of moving. I had suggested we throw those away too, but Dad had gotten this strange look on his face and said, "Not yet. These aren't ready to go yet." Mr. Peterson cleared his throat. "There is one more thing, A letter to be given to Emma after the reading of the will. He handed me a sealed envelope with my name written in my father's shaky handwriting. Victoria rolled her eyes. Probably an apology for being such a disappointment of a father, she muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. I tucked the letter into my purse, unopened. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me read it here, seeing whatever emotion it might bring to my face. "Is that everything?" Richard asked, already pulling out his phone to call their financial advisor. "That's everything," Mr. Peterson confirmed. As everyone stood to leave, Victoria approached me with what she probably thought was a sympathetic expression. "Emma, I know this must be hard for you. If you need help with the storage unit fees after the year is up, just let me know. I'm sure we can work something out." The condescension in her voice was thick enough to choke on. Behind her, Patricia was already discussing renovation plans for Dad's house with Richard, talking about marble countertops and infinity pools as if my father's body wasn't still fresh in the ground. "I'll be fine," I said quietly. "Of course you will," Victoria said, patting my arm like I was a child. "You always did have simple needs. That's probably why Dad thought the storage unit would be enough for you. Some people are just meant for simpler things." I watched them leave, Victoria's heels clicking against the marble floor, Richard's hand possessively on her lower back, Patricia trailing behind them like a well-dressed vulture. Mr. Peterson lingered for a moment. "Your father was a complicated man," he said quietly. "He often said things were not always what they seemed." Before I could ask what he meant, he was gone, leaving me alone in the conference room with the box of tapes the storage unit manager had brought over as a sample of what was in the unit. I drove home to my small apartment in silence, the box of tapes sitting in the passenger seat like an unwelcome passenger. My phone buzzed with messages from friends who had heard about the will reading, offering condolences and outrage on my behalf. I ignored them all. My apartment was a far cry from the Hartley mansion. One bedroom, a kitchen that was really just a corner of the living room, and a bathroom so small you could touch both walls if you stretched out your arms. But it was mine, paid for with my own money, decorated with things I had chosen myself. No marble countertops or infinity pools, but there was a reading nook by the window where the afternoon sun streamed in, and my books didn't judge me for not having an MBA. I set the box on my coffee table and finally opened my father's letter. "My dearest Emma," it began, and I had to stop because my father had never called me dearest anything when he was alive. "If you are reading this, then the will has been read, and you are probably confused and hurt. Your sister has received the fortune, and you have received what appears to be nothing. But appearances, as you know better than anyone, can be deceiving. The storage unit contains more than old videos. It contains the truth. The truth about our family, about the business, about why I did what I did. You were always the one who saw things others missed, who understood that the real value of things isn't always in their price tag. You worked in a library, surrounded by stories, understanding that sometimes the most powerful thing in the world is information. Start with the tapes labeled 1987. Watch them in order. Watch them alone. Trust no one else with what you find, not until you understand the full picture. Not even Mr. Peterson knows what I've left you, though he suspects something. I know I wasn't the father you deserved. I know I let Patricia and Victoria make you feel small, let them diminish your light. I had my reasons, terrible reasons that I hope you can someday forgive. But know this, you were never the disappointment. You were the only one I could trust with this. The combination to the safe in the storage unit is your birthday. The key is taped under the third box from the left on the bottom shelf. I love you, Emma. I always have, even when I couldn't show it. Be careful, be smart, and remember, sometimes the inheritance that matters most isn't money. Dad, I read the letter 3 times, my hands shaking more with each reading. A safe? Truth about our family? What was he talking about? I looked at the box of tapes on my coffee table. The storage unit manager had grabbed it randomly, he'd said, just to show me what was there. I pulled out the first tape my hand touched. The label, written in my mother's neat handwriting, read, Christmas 1987. 1987. The year my mother died. The year Victoria was 7 and I was 3. The year everything changed. I didn't have a VHS player. Who did anymore? But I knew someone who might. Mrs. Chen lived in the apartment below mine. She was in her 70s, a retired seamstress who had taken me under her wing when I first moved in 5 years ago. She still had what she called her entertainment center, a massive wooden unit with a TV from the 90s, and yes, a VHS player. "Emma!" she exclaimed when she opened her door. "How did the will reading go? Did that father of yours finally do right by you?" Mrs. Chen had opinions about my family. Strong opinions formed during the one disastrous visit Victoria had made to my apartment, during which she had wrinkled her nose at the building's vintage charm and suggested I should be grateful she was willing to visit such a quaint place. "It was interesting," I said. "Mrs. Chen, could I use your VHS player? I have some old family videos I need to watch." "Of course, dear. Come in, come in. I'll make tea." Her apartment smelled like jasmine and the lavender sachets she tucked everywhere. The entertainment center dominated one wall, surrounded by photos of her grandchildren and her late husband. She bustled into the kitchen while I inserted the tape. "Actually, Mrs. Chen," I called out, remembering my father's warning to watch alone. "I just remembered I have to make a phone call. Could I borrow the player? I'll bring it right back." She emerged with a concerned look. "Is everything all right?" "Yes, These are videos of my mother. I haven't seen her face in 20 years. I'd like to watch them alone, if that's okay." Her face softened. "Oh, sweetheart. Of course. Let me help you unhook it." Back in my apartment, I connected the player to my small TV, my hands trembling slightly. I sat on my couch, pulled a blanket around myself, despite the warm evening, and pressed play. The screen flickered to life with that particular quality of old home videos. Slightly grainy, colors a bit too saturated, everything looking somehow both more real and less real than memory. It was our old house, the one we'd lived in before Dad made his fortune, before we moved to the mansion. The living room was modest but cozy, with a Christmas tree that looked like it had been decorated by enthusiastic children. Too much. Tinsel, ornaments clustered in odd places, a star that tilted precariously to one side. My mother appeared on screen, and my breath caught. I had photos of her, of course, but seeing her move, hearing her voice, she was beautiful in that effortless way that I had never inherited. Victoria had gotten her delicate features, her natural grace. I had gotten Dad's sturdy build, his stubborn chin, his unruly hair that no amount of product could tame. "Say hi to the camera, girls!" Mom's voice called out, warm and full of laughter. 7-year-old Victoria pranced into frame, already poised, already perfect. "Hi, future people!" she chirped, doing a little twirl that made her Christmas dress bell out. "Emma, come say hi," Mom coaxed, and then there I was, toddling into view, chocolate smeared on my face, my Christmas dress already rumpled, one sock missing. "She's such a mess," Victoria said, but not meanly. She was laughing, scooping me up in a hug that made me giggle. My messy little sister. The camera shook as it was handed off, and then my father appeared in frame. But this wasn't the father I remembered. This man was laughing, genuinely laughing, as he tickled me and Victoria. This man looked at my mother with such love, it made my chest ache. This man picked me up and tossed me in the air, calling me his little explorer when I tried to grab the camera. "William, be careful," Mom laughed, but she was smiling. "Emma's tough," Dad said, holding me up high. "Aren't you, baby girl? Tougher than all of us." The tape continued, showing our Christmas morning, the 4 of us together, happy. Victoria and I playing together, actually playing together, like real sisters who loved each other. Dad reading us stories, doing different voices for all the characters. Mom singing carols while she cooked. Dad joining in off-key, making us all laugh. This was not the family I remembered, Or rather, this was not the family I was allowed to remember. The tape ended with Mom tucking us into bed. Victoria and I shared a room then, our twin beds separated by a small nightstand. Mom kissed Victoria goodnight, then came to my bed. "Sweet dreams, my brave girl," she whispered, smoothing my hair back. "You're going to do amazing things someday. Different things, special things. Don't let anyone make you forget that." The screen went to static. I sat there in the gathering darkness, tears streaming down my face. I had been happy. We had been happy. Victoria had loved me. Dad had loved me. What had happened? How had we gone from that family to the cold, bitter strangers we had become? I reached for the box and pulled out another tape. This one was labeled Spring 1987 in Dad's handwriting. The video opened on what looked like a business dinner. The camera was set up on a tripod in the corner of our dining room, capturing Dad at the head of the table with several men in suits. This was strange. Why would this be with the family videos? I recognized one of the men immediately, even though he was much younger. Robert Blackwood, Richard's father, Victoria's father-in-law. He was gesturing animatedly, clearly trying to convince my father of something. "The property values are only going to go up," Blackwood was saying, "but we need to move fast. The old woman doesn't know what she's sitting on." "I don't know, Robert," my father said, and his voice was uncertain, uncomfortable. "Forcing her out seems wrong. She's lived there for 40 years. Business is business, William. You want to make real money? You want to provide for those beautiful girls of yours? Sometimes you have to make hard choices." Another man leaned forward. I didn't recognize him. "The paperwork is already drawn up. All we need is your signature as the property manager. You convince her to sell for our price, or we find ways to make her want to leave. Code violations, tax issues, there are ways." "That's illegal," my father said flatly. "That's business," Blackwood countered. "You're either with us or against us, William. And if you're against us, well, it would be a shame if certain information about your past came to light. That little issue with your brother's death, the insurance money that started your business." The temperature in my apartment seemed to drop 10 degrees. My Uncle Thomas had died in a car accident when I was a baby. Dad had inherited his life insurance policy, which he'd used to buy his first rental property. It had always been a family tragedy turned into a bittersweet legacy. But the way Blackwood said it, "You're threatening me?" my father asked, his voice deadly quiet. "I'm offering you an opportunity," Blackwood said smoothly. "Join us, make more money than you ever dreamed, and your secrets stay buried. Refuse, and, well, your girls might grow up visiting Daddy in prison." The tape cut to black for a moment, then resumed. The men were gone, and my father was sitting alone at the table, his head in his hands. My mother entered the frame. "They're gone?" she asked softly. "Margaret, what have I done?" My father's voice was broken. "What have I gotten us into?" "We'll figure it out," she said, wrapping her arms around him. "We'll find a way out. He knows about Thomas. I don't know how, but he knows. The accident wasn't your fault, William. But I was driving. I had been drinking. Not much, but... And then I lied to the insurance company. If that comes out..." My hand flew to my mouth. My uncle's death wasn't exactly an accident, and my father had been involved. My mother's voice on the tape was firm. "You made a mistake, a terrible mistake. But Thomas forgave you. He told you to take that money, to build something with it. And you have. You've built a good life for us. Built on a lie, and now Blackwood wants me to build more lies, to hurt innocent people. Margaret, I can't, but if I don't, then we'll face whatever comes. Together." The tape ended. I ejected it with shaking hands and grabbed another. This one was from late 1987, just a month before my mother's death. But this wasn't a family moment. This was security footage from what looked like an office building. The timestamp showed 2 a.m. A figure in dark clothing was going through filing cabinets, photographing documents. The figure turned, and for just a moment, their face was visible in the moonlight from the window. It was my mother. The next tape was dated a week later. It showed my parents in what looked like a hotel room, documents spread across the bed. "This is it," my mother was saying, excited. "William, this is enough to bring them all down. The fraud, the extortion, the blackmail. Robert Blackwood and his associates have been doing this for years. We can go to the FBI with this." "It's dangerous," my father said. "If they find out what we have." "They won't. I've been careful, and I've made copies, hidden them where no one will think to look." "Where?" My mother smiled, that mischievous smile I barely remembered. "Somewhere in plain sight, somewhere no one would ever suspect holds the keys to a criminal empire." 2 weeks later, she was dead. "A car accident," they said. "Brake failure on a winding road. No one questioned it. Accidents happen." I stopped the tape, my whole body shaking. My mother had been murdered. She had to have been. She had gathered evidence against Robert Blackwood and his criminal associates, and they had killed her for it. But where had she hidden the evidence? Somewhere in plain sight. I grabbed the next tape, dated just days after her death. It was my father, alone, speaking directly to the camera. "Emma, if you're watching this, you're probably an adult now. I hope I'm dead, because that's the only way you'll ever see these tapes. I'm about to do something terrible, something that will make you hate me. But I need you to understand why. Your mother is dead. They killed her, though I can never prove it. They've made it clear that if I don't cooperate, you and Victoria are next. So I'm going to cooperate. I'm going to become the man they want me to be. I'm going to build their empire, launder their money, destroy anyone who gets in their way. And I'm going to make Victoria my heir, bring her into the business because they demanded it. One daughter to carry on the legacy, one daughter to be the threat they hold over my head. But Emma, my brave, smart Emma, you're going to be free. I'm going to push you away, let Patricia and Victoria treat you badly, make you want nothing to do with the family business. Because as long as they think you're worthless to me, you're safe. And someday, when I'm gone, when they can't hurt you anymore, you'll find these tapes, you'll find your mother's evidence, and you'll finish what she started. The evidence is hidden in the last place anyone would look. Your mother was brilliant that way. She knew they'd tear apart our finances, our properties, our associates, but they'd never think to look in something worthless, something only valuable to a grieving family. I'm sorry for what I'm about to become. I'm sorry for the father I won't be. But know that every cold word, every dismissal, every time I let them hurt you, it's because I love you too much to let them destroy you like they destroyed her. Be strong, my explorer. Be patient. And when the time comes, be ruthless. They took your mother from us. Don't let them get away with it. I had to pause the tape to run to the bathroom, where I threw up until there was nothing left. My entire life had been a lie, but not the kind of lie I had thought. My father hadn't been cold and distant because he didn't love me. He had been cold and distant because he loved me too much to let me become a target. I splashed cold water on my face and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked like him, I realized. Same stubborn chin, same determined eyes, the same face that had fooled everyone for 20 years. I went back to the tapes. The next one was labeled Emma's 4th birthday, the year after Mom died. It started normally enough, a birthday party in our new, much larger house. Victoria was there, already distant, already being groomed by Patricia, who had appeared in our lives with suspicious quickness after Mom's death. But then, after the party, when everyone had gone home, the tape continued. My father was sitting in his study, and I had toddled in, still wearing my birthday dress, carrying something. The camera, probably left running by accident, captured it all from across the room. "Daddy sad?" little me asked. "No, baby. Daddy's fine." "Daddy misses Mommy?" Yes, I do." "Me too, but Mommy left presents." "What do you mean, sweetheart?" Little me held up what she was carrying. It was a teddy bear, one I vaguely remembered. Mr. Buttons, I had called him. Mommy said Mr. Buttons keeps secrets, important secrets, said to tell you when she couldn't. My father went very still. When did Mommy tell you this? Before she went to heaven, said Mr. Buttons would keep me safe, keep secrets safe. My father pulled me into his lap, holding me tight. Where is Mr. Buttons now, Emma? In my room. He watches me sleep. Good. That's good. Keep him safe, okay? He's very special. Okay, Daddy. The tape ended. Mr. Buttons, a teddy bear. My mother had hidden evidence that could bring down a criminal empire in my childhood teddy bear? I laughed. I couldn't help it. It was so absurd, so brilliant. Who would ever think to look inside a child's toy? But where was Mr. Buttons now? I hadn't seen that bear in, God, decades. Then I remembered. When we had cleaned out the storage unit 2 years ago, I had found a box of my old toys. Dad had insisted on keeping them, even though I'd said I didn't need them. You might want them someday, he'd said. When you have kids of your own. The storage unit. Of course, everything led back to the storage unit. I looked at the clock. It was past midnight. The storage facility would be closed, but I had the access code, and it had 24-hour entry for unit holders. I should wait until morning. I should be sensible. But I had been sensible my whole life, and where had it gotten me? My mother had been murdered. My father had been blackmailed. My entire family was built on crime and blood. I grabbed my keys and my father's letter with the combination to the safe. As I was leaving, I grabbed one more tape at random, thinking I might need more information. The storage facility was on the outskirts of town, one of those places that looked abandoned even when it wasn't. The security light flickered as I punched in my code, the gate groaning open like something out of a horror movie. Unit 47B was at the back of the complex, up a flight of metal stairs that clanged with every step. The lock was stiff, but it opened. The overhead light buzzed to life, revealing dozens of boxes, old furniture covered in sheets, and the promised safe, tucked in a corner behind a stack of photo albums. I found the box of toys quickly. It was labeled in my mother's handwriting. Emma's Treasures. Inside, beneath dolls I barely remembered and books I had loved, was Mr. Buttons. He was smaller than I remembered, worn and faded. One button eye was loose, and his fur was matted in places. But when I picked him up, I could feel it, something inside that wasn't stuffing. My hands shook as I found the seam along his back, carefully pulling the old stitches apart. Inside, wrapped in plastic, was a small rectangular object, a micro cassette tape, the kind that would fit in a pocket recorder. But there was more. Photographs, documents, all miniaturized, all protected in plastic. My mother had been thorough. I heard footsteps on the metal stairs. My blood froze. The facility was supposed to be empty at this hour. I quickly shoved everything back into the bear and looked around for another exit. There wasn't one. The footsteps stopped outside my unit. Then slowly the door began to roll up. I had left it unlocked. Robert Blackwood stood there, looking older, but just as dangerous as he had in those videos. Behind him were two men I didn't recognize. "Hello, Emma," he said pleasantly. "Working late?" "How did you—" "Find you? Your sister called me, said you were acting strangely after the will reading, that you'd gotten some old videos and were asking questions. She was worried about you." His smile was cold. "We've been watching this unit for years, waiting to see if William would ever come for whatever Margaret hid. Imagine our surprise when you showed up instead." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't insult my intelligence. You have your mother's face, you know. Every time I saw you at those family dinners, it was like she was there, judging me." He stepped into the unit. "She was too clever for her own good, just like you're trying to be." "My father's lawyer knows I'm here," I lied. "No, he doesn't, but nice try." He gestured to the men behind him. "Search everything." They moved past him, starting to tear through boxes. I clutched Mr. Buttons tighter. "That's cute," Blackwood said, noticing. "Still carrying around teddy bears at your age? Your sister was right. You really are pathetic." One of the men reached for the bear. I pulled back. "Give it to him, Emma. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. You killed my mother. Your mother killed herself the moment she started snooping where she didn't belong. Just like your father killed himself when he thought he could outsmart me with this little treasure hunt." "My father's death was natural. Cancer." Blackwood laughed. "Cancer can be so unpredictable, can't it? Sometimes it moves faster than expected, especially when helped along. They had killed him too. They had killed both my parents." The man grabbed for the bear again, and this time he got it. I watched as he tore it open, finding the tape and documents. "Finally," Blackwood said, taking them. 20 years of waiting. And finally we can close this chapter." He looked at me. "You know, your father begged at the end. Not for his life, but for yours. Made me promise you'd be safe if he died quietly. And I'm a man of my word. You can walk out of here, Emma. Go back to your little apartment, your little library job, your little life. Forget this ever happened. Your sister will take care of you, I'm sure. She's always been generous with charity cases." Or, there is no or. This is me being generous. Your mother didn't get this choice. Your father only got it because he was useful to us for 20 years. You're nobody. A librarian who lives in a one-bedroom apartment and can't even afford a car made in this decade. Take the gift I'm offering." One of the men had moved to the safe, was working on the combination. I watched him try several combinations, all failing. "What's the combination?" Blackwood asked me. "I don't know." He sighed. "Emma, I'm trying to be nice here. The combination? I told you, I don't know. I just came here to look at old photos." The man at the safe tried again, failed again. "It's probably his birthday," one of them suggested. "Already tried it." "Their anniversary?" "Tried that too." Blackwood's patience was wearing thin. "Just blow it open." "Hear the noise, then take it with us." He turned back to me. "Last chance, Emma. The combination?" I stayed silent. "Fine. You can explain it to your sister when you mysteriously disappear. Another family tragedy. They do seem to follow the Hartleys around." That's when I heard it. Sirens. Distant, but getting closer. Blackwood heard them too. "What did you do?" "Nothing," I said honestly. I had done nothing. The sirens got louder. Multiple vehicles. "We need to go," one of the men said urgently. "Not without that safe. It's too heavy and those sirens could be going anywhere." But they weren't going anywhere. They were coming here. I could see the lights now, flooding the complex. "Go!" Blackwood shouted, and they ran, taking Mr. Buttons and the evidence with them. I stood there, shaking, as police cars surrounded the building. Officers swarmed the stairs, weapons drawn. "Emma Hartley?" one called out. "Yes? Are you hurt?" "No, How did you know?" Mr. Peterson appeared behind the officers, looking rumpled and worried. "Your neighbor, Mrs. Chen, called me. Said you'd borrowed her VHS player and seemed upset. When you didn't answer your door, she used her spare key. She found the videos playing, saw what was on them, called me, and I called the police." "But how did you know I'd be here?" "Your father gave me a sealed envelope years ago. Said if anything ever happened to him and you started asking questions, I should open it. It had this address and a warning about Robert Blackwood." He paused. "We've been building a case against him for years. Your father was secretly helping us, feeding us information, but we never had enough for a conviction. They took the evidence. From the bear. They took it." "What evidence?" I explained about Mr. Buttons, about what my mother had hidden. Peterson's face fell. "Without that, we still don't have enough." That's when I remembered the safe. "The combination," I said suddenly. "It's my birthday. Dad said so in his letter." The safe was still there, too heavy for them to have taken. I knelt beside it, entering my birthday with shaking fingers. It clicked open. Inside were more tapes, dozens of them, and documents, and a letter in my father's handwriting. "Emma," it read, "if you're reading this, you found Mr. Buttons, but that was just the backup. Your mother hid the originals somewhere else, and I spent 20 years adding to her collection. Every crime, every payoff, every murder, including your mother's. It's all here. The bear was meant to lead them away from the real evidence if they ever came looking. Your mother was brilliant, but I learned to be cunning. Take this to the FBI, not the local police. Blackwood owns too many people locally. There's an agent's card in the bottom of the safe. Agent Sarah Martinez. She's clean. Trust her. And Emma, I'm proud of you. I've always been proud of you. You chose to help people, to be good, despite everything. That's why it had to be you. Victoria is too much a part of their world now. But you're your mother's daughter. You're clean." I looked up at Peterson. "We need to call the FBI." The next few hours were a blur. Agent Martinez arrived with a full team. The evidence was cataloged. My statement was taken. By dawn, they were making arrests. Robert Blackwood was picked up at his estate, still in his pajamas. Richard, Victoria's husband, was arrested at his office. There were dozens of others, a network of corruption that stretched through the city's entire power structure. Victoria called me, screaming, incoherent. "What have you done? They've arrested Richard. They're freezing our assets. They're saying Dad was part of some criminal conspiracy." "Dad was a victim," I said quietly. "They blackmailed him after Mom found out what they were doing. They killed her, Victoria. They killed our mother." "You're lying. You're just jealous. You've always been jealous." "I have the tapes, Victoria. Home videos, but also surveillance footage, recordings Dad made, 20 years of evidence." She was quiet for a long moment. Then, in a small voice I hadn't heard since we were children, she asked, "They really killed Mom?" "Yes. And Dad? Dad knew?" "He knew, but they threatened us, said they'd kill us too if he didn't cooperate. Everything he did, all of it, was to keep us safe. But he gave me everything, the business, the money, because they demanded it. They wanted an heir they could control. And Victoria, I think part of him hoped you'd be caught, that you'd pay for choosing their side." She hung up on me. The trials took 2 years. 2 years of testimony, of death threats, of Victoria publicly calling me a liar and privately begging me to make it stop. She hadn't known, it turned out. She had been as much a pawn as anyone, raised to believe that ruthlessness was strength, that cruelty was success. But ignorance wasn't innocence. She had signed documents, authorized payments, participated in the money laundering, even if she hadn't known that's what it was. She got 5 years, out in 3 with good behavior. She lost everything else, the money, the houses, the reputation. Robert Blackwood got life without parole. The murder of my mother, finally proven. Richard got 20 years. Dozens of others got various sentences. The real estate empire my father had built was dissolved, the assets sold off. The victims of Blackwood's schemes were compensated. What was left, surprisingly, came to me. Not millions, but enough. Enough to quit my job at the library and open my own bookstore. Enough to buy a small house with a garden. Enough to feel secure for the first time in my life. Patricia disappeared one night, taking whatever jewelry she could carry. We never found her. Victoria got out of prison on a rainy Tuesday. I was waiting for her. She looked different, smaller somehow. The designer clothes were gone, replaced with ill-fitting jeans and a cheap raincoat. The perfectly styled hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, but the biggest change was in her eyes. The arrogance was gone, replaced with something I couldn't quite read. "You came," she said, surprised. "You're my sister. I treated you horribly." "Yes." "I called you a liar, said terrible things." "Yes." "Why are you here?" I held up a USB drive. "The home videos, the real ones, the ones from before Mom died. I thought you might want to see who we used to be." She started crying then, standing there in the rain outside the prison gates. I pulled her into a hug, and for the first time in 20 years, she hugged me back. "I don't remember her," she whispered. "Not really. Patricia told me so many lies about her, and I believed them all." "Then let me help you remember." She lived with me for 6 months while she got back on her feet. We watched those old videos together, rebuilding our relationship memory by memory. She got a job at a local bakery, starting at the bottom, learning what it meant to work for something real. She was good at it, it turned out. All that attention to detail that had made her perfect for criminal enterprise made her excellent at decorating wedding cakes. One evening, as we sat in my garden watching the sunset, she asked, "Do you think Dad would forgive me?" "I think Dad loved us both, in his broken way. I think he'd be proud that we found our way back to each other." "I'm sorry, Emma, for all of it." "I know. I spent so many years thinking I was the smart one, the successful one. But you were the one who saw the truth. You were the one who was brave enough to expose it. I was just the one with nothing to lose." "No," she said firmly. "You were the one with everything to gain. The truth, justice, freedom. I had money, but you had integrity, and in the end, that was worth more." Mrs. Chen became a regular at my bookstore, holding court in the mystery section, telling anyone who would listen how she had helped solve the crime of the century. The fact that she had mostly just made tea and called Mr. Peterson didn't diminish her enthusiasm for the story. Mr. Peterson retired early, saying he'd had enough of criminal law. He bought a boat and sent me postcards from various fishing spots. Agent Martinez stopped by occasionally, ostensibly to check on my security, but really, I think, to make sure I was okay. "You did a brave thing," she told me once. "Not many people would have risked everything for the truth." "My mother did," I replied. "It just took me 20 years to finish what she started." The bookstore thrived. I specialized in mysteries and true crime because of course I did. People came from all over to meet the woman who had brought down the Blackwood Empire. I didn't mind the attention as much as I'd thought I would. It was nice to be seen, to be valued, to be more than the other daughter. But the best part was the children's section. I held story time every Saturday, reading to kids whose eyes went wide with wonder at tales of brave knights and clever princesses. Sometimes, when I read about heroes who fought against impossible odds, I thought about my mother, breaking into that office at 2 a.m, photographing evidence that she knew might get her killed. I thought about my father, playing a role for 20 years to keep his daughters safe. Heroes didn't always wear capes or armor. Sometimes they wore sensible shoes and carried teddy bears. One day, a young woman came into the store. She was maybe 25, nervous, clutching a folder to her chest. "Are you Emma Hartley?" she asked. "Yes." I think my family is involved in something bad. I found documents, recordings, but I don't know who to trust. The police, the lawyers, they're all connected to my father's business. I read about what you did, how you exposed everything despite the danger. Can you help me?" I looked at her, this scared young woman who reminded me so much of myself finding those tapes. "I can't investigate for you," I said, "but I can put you in touch with people who can, people I trust." I gave her Agent Martinez's card, Mr. Peterson's new number. I told her about the importance of making copies, of protecting evidence, of being careful who to trust. "Were you scared?" she asked, "when you were going through it?" "Terrified," I admitted. But I was more scared of letting them get away with it, of living my whole life in a lie. She left with resources, with hope, with the knowledge that someone believed her. A month later, I saw on the news that another major corruption ring had been exposed. She sent me a card that just said, "Thank you for showing me it was possible." Victoria got promoted to head baker. She started dating one of the delivery drivers, a kind man named David, who had no idea about her past until she told him herself. He didn't care. "Everyone deserves a second chance," he said. They got married in my garden, a small ceremony with just a few friends. She wore a simple dress she'd bought secondhand and looked more beautiful than she ever had in designer gowns. "Do you ever miss it?" I asked her once. "The money? The power?" "I miss feeling important," she admitted. But I realize now I was never important to them. I was just useful. Here at the bakery, when someone's face lights up at a cake I made for their kid's birthday, that's real importance. That's real value. On the 5th anniversary of my father's death, we visited his grave together. It was the first time Victoria had been there since the funeral. We brought flowers, wildflowers from my garden, not the expensive arrangements that used to mark family occasions. "Do you think he knew?" Victoria asked. "That you'd figure it all out?" I think he hoped. He knew I loved puzzles, loved mysteries. He knew I wouldn't be able to leave it alone. "He saved us," she said quietly, in his own twisted way. "He gave up his soul to save our lives. And Mom gave up her life to save our souls," I added. We stood there in silence, two sisters who had found their way back to each other through tragedy and truth. That night, I found one last tape I hadn't watched. It was labeled simply, "For Emma," in my father's handwriting. It was recent, probably made just months before his death. He was sitting in his study, looking directly at the camera. He looked tired, worn down by decades of living a lie. "Emma," he began, "if you're watching this, then you found everything. You know the truth. You know what I did and why. I don't ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it, but I want you to know something. Every time you chose kindness over cruelty, every time you picked up a book instead of a weapon, every time you helped someone at that library, even though your own family treated you as less than, you were resisting them. You were proving that goodness could survive in our poisoned family. Your mother would be so proud of you. She saw it in you even when you were tiny, that core of steel wrapped in gentleness. That's why she trusted you with Mr. Buttons, not because you were the youngest and wouldn't be suspected, but because even at 3 years old, you had a strength that Victoria, for all her accomplishments, never developed. The strength to be vulnerable, the strength to be kind in a cruel world. I'm sorry I couldn't be the father you deserved. I'm sorry I let them make you feel small. But you were never small, Emma. You were always the giant among us, the only one who could have done what you did. Take care of your sister. She'll need you once this all comes out. She's not evil, just lost. Help her find her way back to who she was before I let them corrupt her. And live, Emma. Live the life your mother and I couldn't. Be happy. Be free. Be yourself, fully and completely. That's all we ever really wanted for you. I love you, my brave explorer. Thank you for finishing what your mother started. Thank you for saving what was left of our family's soul." The tape ended. I sat in my living room, in my small but perfect house, surrounded by books and pictures and the life I had built from the ashes of lies. Victoria was in the kitchen, teaching David her new recipe for chocolate soufflé. Mrs. Chen was in the garden, tending to the tomatoes she had insisted on planting. The cat I had adopted, a scrappy tabby I'd named Margaret after my mother, was purring in my lap. This wasn't the inheritance anyone had expected me to receive. Not money or property or power, but truth, justice, freedom, family, real family, built on honesty instead of lies. I looked at the photo on my mantle, the only family photo I had from before Mom died. 4 people, smiling, unaware of what was coming. But also, I realized now, full of love, real love, the kind that sacrifices, that protects, that endures even through decades of deception. My phone buzzed. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Ms. Hartley, my name is Jennifer Walsh. I'm a documentary filmmaker. I would love to talk to you about telling your family's story. I think it's important that people understand how corruption really works, how it destroys families from the inside. Would you be willing to meet?" I thought about it. The story was public record now, but the real story, the emotional truth of it, that was mine to tell or not tell. I texted back, "Yes, but my sister has to be part of it. This is her story too." Victoria looked over. "Who was that?" "Someone who wants to tell our story." The real story? All of it. She was quiet for a moment. Then, good. Maybe it will help someone else. Maybe some other family trapped in this kind of nightmare will see there's a way out. Through the truth, she agreed. The documentary came out 2 years later. The Inheritance, it was called. It won 3 Emmys and sparked a national conversation about white-collar crime, family dynamics, and the price of silence. But more importantly, it helped 17 other families come forward with their own stories of being trapped in criminal enterprises. 17 other families who found their way to freedom. Victoria and I did the interview together, sitting in my garden, the same spot where we had reconciled. She cried when talking about our mother. I cried when talking about our father. But we held hands through it all, 2 sisters who had traveled through hell to find each other again. "What do you want people to take away from your story?" the filmmaker asked at the end. Victoria answered first. That it's never too late to choose differently. I spent 20 years on the wrong side, but I was given a chance to make it right. Not everyone gets that chance. If you do, take it. "And you, Emma?" the filmmaker asked. I thought about it. That the most valuable inheritance isn't always money. Sometimes it's truth. Sometimes it's justice. Sometimes it's just the chance to be who you really are, not who others expect you to be. My father left me a box of old tapes that everyone thought was worthless. But those tapes gave me my life back. They gave me my sister back. They gave me the truth about my parents. That's worth more than all the money in the world. The filmmaker turned off the camera, but then asked, off the record, "Do you forgive your father for all the years of coldness, of letting you be treated badly?" I looked at Victoria, who was watching me carefully. "I understand him," I said finally. "He was faced with an impossible choice, and he made the one he thought would keep us alive. I can't say I forgive him, not entirely. The damage was real, the pain was real, but I can say I love him. Despite everything, because of everything, I love him. And I think, in the end, that's what family is. Not perfection, not even forgiveness, but love that endures despite the damage." "And your mother?" the filmmaker asked. "She started all this by investigating Blackwood. Do you ever wish she had just left it alone?" "Never," Victoria said firmly, surprising me. "Our mother died a hero. She died trying to stop evil men from hurting innocent people. I wish I had known that growing up. I wish I had known I was the daughter of a hero instead of believing I was the daughter of a victim." "She saved us," I added. "Maybe not in the way she intended, but her courage, her refusal to look away from evil, that saved our souls. Even if it took 20 years to realize it. 10 years have passed since that night in the storage unit. 10 years since I found Mr. Buttons and the terrible truth he was hiding. Victoria and David have 2 kids now. She named them Margaret and William, after our parents. They call me Aunt Emma and spend every Saturday at my bookstore, pulling picture books off the shelves and begging for just one more story. The bookstore has expanded. I bought the space next door and turned it into a community center where people can safely report suspected criminal activity, where families torn apart by white-collar crime can find support. Agent Martinez, now retired, volunteers there twice a week. I never married, never had kids of my own. But I have a full life, fuller than I ever imagined when I was just the other daughter, the disappointment, the one who got a box of worthless tapes. Sometimes late at night, I watch those old home videos. Not the evidence, not the confessions, but the family moments. My mother singing, my father laughing, Victoria and I playing together like real sisters, the family we were before the world broke us. And I think about inheritance, about what we pass down intentionally or not. My parents passed down trauma and lies, but also courage and love. Victoria passed down to her children the hard-won wisdom of someone who had been on the wrong side and found her way back. And me? I hope I pass down the knowledge that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to be what others expect. Refuse to be silent. refused to look away. In my bedroom, on a shelf where I can see him every day, sits Mr. Buttons. I had him repaired, his seams carefully stitched, his button eye secured. He's a reminder that the most valuable things often come in the most unexpected packages. That secrets can be both poison and medicine, depending on what you do with them. Sometimes people ask me if I'm bitter about the years I lost, the childhood that was stolen, the father who couldn't love me openly. And the truth is, I was bitter, for a long time. But bitterness is just another kind of prison, and I've had enough of those. Now, I'm grateful. Grateful that my mother was brave enough to gather evidence. Grateful that my father was clever enough to preserve it. Grateful that Mrs. Chen was nosy enough to call Mr. Peterson. Grateful that Victoria was strong enough to rebuild herself. And grateful for that box of tapes that everyone thought was worthless. Because in the end, that's what saved us all. Not the money, not the real estate empire, not the connections or the power. Just a cardboard box full of memories and truth, waiting patiently in a storage unit for someone to finally understand its value. The last time I visited my parents' graves, I brought them each a copy of the documentary. I know that's silly, they can't watch it, but I wanted them to know that their story had been told, the real story, the complicated, painful, ultimately redemptive truth of who they were and what they sacrificed. We did it, I told them. We brought them down. We got justice. We found our way back to each other. The wind rustled through the cemetery trees, and for just a moment, I could swear I heard my mother's voice, the way it sounded on those tapes. My brave girl, I knew you would. But that's probably just my imagination. The dead don't speak to us. They just leave us tapes. And sometimes, if we're very lucky and very brave, those tapes are enough to change everything. Looking back now, I realize that my story, our story, isn't really about inheritance at all. It's about the price of truth and the cost of lies. It's about how love can survive even when it's forced to hide. It's about the courage it takes to look at your life and realize everything you believed was wrong, and the greater courage it takes to do something about it. When I was 23, sitting in that lawyer's office watching my sister count her millions while I stared at a box of old tapes, I thought I was worthless. I thought I was unloved. I thought I was nobody. I was wrong about all of it. I was Emma Hartley, daughter of Margaret and William, sister to Victoria, keeper of secrets, seeker of truth. I was the inheritor of something far more valuable than money, the chance to make things right. And that, it turns out, was worth everything.